Yes, folks, we have biased fake news reporting when it comes to Syria, Turkey and Greece. And as Cross the Rubicon said the other day when speaking about the crisis at the border, Greece will always be portrayed as bad because it's not the right religion. And when a conflict arises between Syria and Turkey, Russia becomes the bad boy because they are also not the right religion. Now, one of the most grotesque reporters is BBC's Orla Guerin. When she reports, she cynically speaks in a soft, monotone voice designed to evoke sympathy, compassion and support from the audience. Have a look.
Idlib is the last region still controlled by the jihadists and rebels who are backed by Turkey.
Not nice people.
Who have been trying to overthrow the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad since 2011. The UN estimates almost 1 million people have fled their homes since December because of the fighting. In the early hours of this morning, Russian airstrikes killed 16 civilians sheltering in a farm in Marat Mizrin. Our international correspondent Orla Guerin was there. Her report, filmed by Göktay Kulroltan, contains some upsetting images.
Now listen closely to her voice.
Working by flashlight to reclaim the living from the rubble. The target here, inexplicably, a poultry farm which became a refuge for some of Idlib's displaced. By day, a refuge no more.
By day, a refuge no more.
Just hours before ceasefire talks began in Moscow, this devastation was Russia's handiwork.
Russia bad.
Last night, I was slept here. This is my home. Here, when the Russian airport bombed.
This is from the bomb?
Yes. Civilians. We are civilians.
And we are supposed to believe that.
And they were killed as they slept, though the Syrian regime and its Russian backers say they are targeting terrorists. Well, when you take a look around here among the scattered belongings, you can see that this was a home, a place where parents were trying to keep their children safe. Some of the toys are still here.
Because you put them there.
And the dishes are smashed at my feet. What possible justification could there be for bombing a place like this, full of civilians? But in Idlib, this has been happening day in and day out. And there's the sound now of more explosions. We've been hearing bombings in the distance since we arrived. Ahmed tells me it's fine if he dies, but he's worried for his children.
He's worried for his children. Emotion, emotion, emotion. And all the mainstream media play the children card.
They just spent a night cold and wet out in the open. And for what? A sliver of hope sparked by Turkey saying it would no longer stop refugees crossing to Europe and facilitating their transport here to the border with Greece. Abdullah is the sole survivor of a bombing that killed the rest of his family in Syria.
They
thought it was open. They thought the whole border was open.
And you'll notice that most of these so-called refugees are young men.
It's not. Greece is not letting anyone through.
But it's quite chaotic. It's quite intense. People are just trying to bust through towards what they think is going to be a better life.
Europe doesn't want them, never really has.
Europe bad.
Striking a financial aid deal with Turkey back in 2016 that it never fully paid up on to stem the refugee flood. Turkey, hosting upwards of 3.5 million refugees, mostly from Syria, has long threatened to open the gates if left to shoulder the refugee burden alone. And now, Turkey is even more angered by the West's refusal to support it in Idlib with anything more than rhetoric. Many here are aware they are being used as leverage. The tear gas wafts over and mixes with smoke from multiple fires as those here try to stay warm. Samira's husband was killed in Iraq by ISIS. She came to Turkey with her children, elderly mother, and disabled brother.
Now, even though most of these so-called refugees are mainly young men, the focus of her story is on this family. Emotion, emotion, emotion. And the next story sounds exactly the same.
Turkey has made good on threats to allow migrants to move closer to the European Union. Ankara says 18,000 people have crossed the border since Friday. There's been arrivals by land and by sea along borders with Greece and Bulgaria. But both countries have boosted security at their borders with Turkey, and thousands of migrants are now stuck in no man's land between the two sides. Turkish officials announced they would no longer stop migrants from crossing into Europe after dozens of Turkish troops were killed in a Syrian government airstrike in Idlib province.
I came here to enter Yunan, but as you see the situation, we cannot go inside. They don't let us go inside. They fire on us tear gases.
They fire on us with tear gases.
We had children there.
Our children's are there. We had children's there.
We had women there.
We had women's there.
We had disabled persons there, and
we had disabled persons there. So you deliberately put those weak people out in front and you hid behind them. And this is what the media won't report. Yes, these so-called refugees are smoking their children so they cry for the cameras. Yes, that's what's really going on, folks. So why isn't the media reporting that? Well, here's why.
The piss week, the media is piss week, and academia is piss week. They're all driven by common purpose, political correctness, and they hate themselves. They hate themselves. If, basically, these people hate themselves for being white.
Yes, and that's the bottom line, folks. They hate themselves for being white. They hate themselves so much they can't even defend themselves.
Really do. They're self-loathing white people. I'm not. Now that sounds, even I'm thinking to myself, that sounds white supremacist. But I don't hate myself for being white. I really don't. Why should I hate myself for being white? But we're being taught to hate ourselves.
Yes, the cultural Marxist indoctrination has worked. Now, I just have a message for the person who sent me the video of the children being smoked. Now, after bookmarking the video, I went back to find your name but couldn't find it anywhere. Anyway, whoever you were, thank you for sending it.